Energy supply chains are falling apart, and the stakes couldn't be higher. While consumers face soaring utility bills, energy-hungry industries are already in distress and cutting output, and now thousands of businesses are being pushed to the brink of bankruptcy as explosive energy prices eat a larger share of their profits. Experts are warning that a catastrophe is coming this winter as unprecedented energy costs risk causing serious physical and financial damage to families, while triple-digit increases threaten to trigger mass business closures and result in job losses and higher consumer prices. That's what we're going to expose today. But before moving on, please support us with a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Now, if you think the worst of energy-driven inflation is already over, we have some unfortunate news for you. Even though prices at the pump have eased compared to the midsummer record nightmare highs, all over the country, utility bills are climbing due to the massive spike in natural gas prices. Over the past week, regulators, grid operators, and utilities warn that the U.S. power supply is shrinking, and the nation's electric grid is growing alarmingly less reliable. Over 75,000 Californians faced extended outages last week, and nearly half of the country remains at risk of facing rolling blackouts. Americans are being increasingly exposed to a far more expensive and volatile natural gas market as geopolitical events continue to escalate on the other side of the globe. Since the United States is now the world's largest liquefied natural gas exporter, U.S. consumers are having to compete against energy-desperate European buyers. The energy crisis that's now unfolding in Europe is having major repercussions here in America, and it's been pushing costs up and destabilizing markets everywhere. European electricity prices have soared so high that they're equivalent to $1,000 per barrel of oil. In Britain, the government announced that energy bills are going to jump 80% in October after nearly doubling earlier this year. Official agencies such as the UK's National Health Service are alerting about a humanitarian crisis, with millions potentially pushed into poverty, and the US is flirting with a similar disaster. Already, more than 20 million American households have fallen behind on their electricity bills, but we haven't even seen prices peaking just yet. Right now, natural gas is at a 14-year high, with prices exploding over 500% since the fall of 2020. The gap between demand and supply is pushing grid operators to a breaking point, and conditions are expected to get even more extreme this winter. During the summer, almost two-thirds of the country were at elevated risk of power shortages and rolling blackouts due to a lack of needed capacity during periods of high demand. But as the winter months approach, there's deep and growing concern that Americans are going to be paying far more for a far less reliable supply of power. At this point, many U.S. families are seeing days-long power cuts. For instance, in Portland's West Hills, thousands of homes were dark as utility companies were forced to halt operations completely due to the threat of high winds and extreme wildfire conditions. Many were left without electricity from Friday until Sunday. "It's very prehistoric over here," said one West Hills resident, Zara Hanan. She said they received a notice on Thursday that power would be out for 12 hours. As of 10 a.m. on Sunday, it's been 48 hours. At first they said it's undetermined. Then they said it would come on at 6 a.m. Then they said 10 a.m. It's now 12 p.m. and it's still not on, she said in a recent interview. All the food in her family's fridge has gone bad due to the prolonged outage. "We're gonna have to throw it all away now because half of it is melted." A new analysis published by Business Insider indicated that heat waves are expected to continue knocking out power across states for days on end. That endangers millions who can't afford to cool down with a generator or a pool. A lack of power will also lead to widespread food spoilage as freezers and refrigerators shut down, it noted. According to data provided by Barclays researchers, utility bills in the U.S. could jump another 40% due to the global energy rally, Bloomberg reported. On Thursday, officials with the U.S. Energy Information Administration highlighted that higher retail electricity prices largely reflect an increase in wholesale power prices driven by rising natural gas prices. In its latest short-term energy outlook, the agency found that U.S. families have over $16 billion in utility debt, and that's up from $8.1 billion at the end of 2020. The average amount owed rose from about $388 to $792, it said. These are very high prices and will not be affordable for many households, emphasized Mark Wolf, Executive Director of the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. We expect to see continued high arrearages accrued by families who cannot afford to pay these high prices on top of continued high rates of inflation in other essential goods like food and shelter, he added. In some places, such as New England and New York, wholesale electricity prices jumped 96% and 124% respectively since the beginning of the year. But EIA is telling us to brace for some serious price shocks all over the nation in the coming months. Preliminary data suggests that the utility arrearages will continue to rise this winter as all signs point to higher home energy prices as natural gas hits a 16-year high with no end in sight, the agency said. At the same time, the outlook for businesses is even scarier. Countless business owners will be forced to close up shop, and those staying open won't get much traffic as consumer spending dramatically slows down, insider analysts warned. Right now, millions of small business owners are still experiencing increased energy bills at a time when costs are rising in most operational areas, explained Alan Thomas, CEO of insurance firm Simply Business. Simultaneously, consumer purchasing power is going down as shoppers cut back on non-essential spending, harming the books of small and medium-sized business owners. I think this is going to be an even bigger crisis than the pandemic because this is going to affect not just lower earners, but middle-income earners as well. I don't see how anybody can absorb those kinds of energy costs, he continued. Several sectors of the industry are already struggling with an unprecedented convergence of cost pressures, with soaring prices for raw materials, fuel, utilities, taxes, and labor. A new survey released by the Federation of Small Businesses shows that companies have experienced, on average, a 424% rise in natural gas costs and a 349% increase in electricity so far this year. But some sectors are being particularly hard hit. Just as it happened during the health crisis, the hospitality sector is being pushed to the edge of a disaster once again. For the owners of the restaurant franchise Tiny Rebel, energy costs alone were up between 600% and 700% this year, CFO Hannah Williams said in a recent interview with CNBC. Their company may not survive this winter, and thousands of others could face a similar fate. Many hotel owners and people from the food and drink sector recently started to speak out about the crippling cost increases they're experiencing. International hotelier Neil Grant, who manages 7 hotels in England and America, revealed that he's seeing electricity prices go from $7,700 to over $18,200, something that led him to believe that many businesses are not going to stay afloat for much longer. We are heading for a massive crisis, he said. It cost us to close during the pandemic, but we came back. I don't know if we can come back from this. When you consider what we're paying out, so what choice do we have but to close, he lamented. It started to cripple us, added David Wilkinson, owner of the Blue Fin restaurant. The summer holiday will be over soon. People will be concentrating on energy prices themselves, so I think this winter is going to be hard. For the managing director of the Frisco Group, businesses are facing a mass extinction event given that they can't keep up with skyrocketing prices for everything. Find a solution to this now or face restaurant closures, she said during an interview with the Morning Advertiser. In the UK, some business owners are saying that they'll lose less money if their businesses close temporarily during the winter to help them cut costs. That's the case of hotel owner and restaurateur Freddie Hitchcock, who expects the energy costs across all his businesses to rise from £265,000 British pounds to £1.25 million per year this fall. New research revealed that more than 70% of restaurants do not expect to survive the winter if nothing is done to ease energy costs. A survey released by The Guardian reported that almost 3/4 of respondents said they would not be able to afford any more energy price increases this year. Higher costs are impacting the manufacturing sector too, with 6 in 10 manufacturers saying they plan to slow down factory output in the fourth quarter due to rampant operational costs. As the Policy and Advocacy Chair, Tina McKenzie, stressed last week, without help, we're facing a generation of lost businesses, lost jobs, and lost potential. In late August, Red Flag Alert, which monitors the financial health of firms, alerted that a series of previously profitable companies are now experiencing significant profit losses for that reason. Among those that survive, many will be forced to lay off thousands of workers, the consultancy said. Red Flag is warning that more than 75,000 larger companies that are high energy users are at risk of insolvency or are likely to lay off staff in the UK. For the US, preliminary research shows that at least 50,000 businesses are on the line. According to the firm, many of them will face a stark choice between paying wages or paying energy bills. Businesses can't absorb these costs. They're going to be forced very quickly into a decision about downsizing or being able to pay energy bills, detailed Chief Economist Nicola Headlam. That's going to be the reality, and it's coming down the track very quickly. As we head towards the colder season of the year, and geopolitical tensions continue to escalate and impact energy markets, data from the Consumer Energy Alliance suggests that the number of business closures in America can shoot up even higher. The organization, which is the leading energy and environmental advocate for families and businesses in the U.S., reminded us that contracts with suppliers are set to expire in September, which means that business energy bills are set to rocket in October. Some will face bills 5 times their current price, they noted. The further increases in energy costs are believed to have a knock-on effect on firms' resilience, as it's feared that soaring energy bills could force more business shutdowns. In 2022, U.S. businesses and manufacturers are set to spend at least $41.4 billion more on business-related energy costs, CEA reported. As this analysis shows, domestic energy policies have real-world implications for America's businesses, manufacturers, families, and consumers. We're effectively driving towards disaster. Federal policies have discouraged U.S. energy production. cancelled critical infrastructure, created inconsistent and confusing regulations, and often impractical solutions leading to unreliable and more harmful environmental energy delivery. These recent policy choices will leave American businesses and manufacturers to foot $41.4 billion more in energy costs in 2022, CEA President David Holt said. Many businesses are already reeling from inflation, higher energy costs, broken supply chains, and a lack of workers. And this is yet another hardship they will likely need to overcome because of poorly conceived policies. Unfortunately, as businesses spend more on energy and transportation, expenses will be passed on to the consumers purchasing household necessities from milk and eggs to cars and trucks. This comes as inflation reached a 40-year high and it's likely to climb higher, Holt continued. At this point, the total number of new commercial and consumer bankruptcies is ticking back up again. According to Epic, in the past quarter, the number of bankruptcy filings in the U.S. rose 34.5% over the previous quarter and is likely to rise even further as small business closures all across the country creep back toward their pandemic peaks. Compared to the same time last year, the United States has lost 22% of its small businesses, a report from the Small Business Roundtable shows. It continues to be a very painful time for small businesses, John Stanford, co-executive director of the Small Business Roundtable, said. According to the report, 27% of small and medium businesses said they had to reduce their workforce, and 48% of those companies said they had to lay off at least half of their workforce. In other words, the energy crisis is reaching unimaginable proportions as we speak. Now a wave of business bankruptcies and mass layoffs is emerging on the horizon, and families will experience another dark and painful winter as supplies dwindle. So if you can, stock up on batteries, candles, non-perishables. Blackouts are coming, and even the world's wealthiest nations will not be spared. There are no quick fixes for the energy affordability and reliability crises now gripping most parts of the country. But Europe's unfolding humanitarian crisis is a wake-up call for America, and one disaster we must avoid.